Hi, I'm Father Joel, and welcome to Pilgrim Priest. Today I'd like to do a shout out to Tammy, who's been a faithful one, giving $1 a podcast for 5 years. Visit patreon.com/pilgrimpriest to learn more. Thank you to all of our supporters and our listeners, and to you. Thanks for tuning in. God bless you. This weekend is our Stewardship Commitment Sunday, which is why we handed out stewardship booklets and commitment cards before Mass began. Every parishioner at the Antigo area Catholic churches is expected to fill out and turn in a commitment card as part of the annual stewardship renewal. Now, some of you already turned in your card. If so, thank you. If not, I feel free to use this time to do your homework. And other folks may be from other parishes, and then this wouldn't really apply to you, but feel free to take the material home, show it to your priest, and say, "Hey, Father, this is something you should start at our parish." We priests love it when we hear that. But some of my best ideas come from other people's parishes. Why do we do our Stewardship Commitment Sunday? We do it because stewardship is a really great way of understanding the gospel and how we can respond to God's call, to God's invitation to be like Jesus. Yes, as Christians, we are called to be little Christs. We are called to be like Jesus. A lot of people tell me, "Well, I really don't need to go to church, Father. I'm a good person." And I say, "Well, that's nice. I'm glad you're a good person. But everyone is called to be a good person. Christians are called to be like God. That's what we're called to." And so we might say, "Wow, that sounds impossible." You're right, it is. None of us can be like God on our own. But that's why God gives us the gift of His own Holy Spirit. His Holy Spirit, the same Spirit that rested on Jesus, the same Spirit that connects Jesus with the Father, the same Spirit dwells in each of us, baptized and confirmed Catholics. And so this Holy Spirit actually gives us the power to do what we can't do on our own, to love God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love one another as Christ has loved us. And that's fundamentally what stewardship is about. It's about responding to that call to love God and to love others. It begins when we realize how much God has already blessed us, that He has given us life, a share in His own life, that He has made us a beautiful world to live in with wonderful fall trees, that we all have plenty of food to eat. In fact, many of us have more than enough food to eat. That seems to be our ongoing problem, huh? And we often, though, as consumers, we are rarely grateful because we're trained to notice the lack in our life and then to think that one more product, one more purchase is going to fix that problem. But this isn't the right Christian attitude. The right Christian attitude is to realize that we are God's beloved children and that God is taking care of us. When we see ourselves as consumers, we tend to start competing with other people. We compare ourselves and we complain. Compare, compete, and complain. That's a fruit. Those are all fruits of consumerism. Because if I have to prove my value to everyone, if my value comes from what I have or what I produce or what I own, and if you're competition with me, then my value and your value are always in competition. So I have to find a way to get ahead. I have to find a way to get a leg up. I have to find a way to look better than you do. And that's exactly what James and John are up to. Jesus has just said in the gospel reading, He's predicted His passion for the third time, that He's going to suffer and die. And this time the disciples respond by saying, "Hey, so when you get into your kingdom, we'd like the prime spots. We'd like to be your number one and number two under the king. Is that too much to ask?" Right? And Jesus' response is very interesting. He doesn't say, "Oh, you guys are trying for too much." He says, "Oh, so you want to be the best, huh? Are you willing to suffer and sacrifice?" And they say, "Absolutely. We are willing to suffer and sacrifice." And Jesus says, "Good, you will. But I can't promise you the particular reward that you're looking for." And then the rest of the disciples are mad at James and John. But Jesus says, hey, you want to be the first? Well, join me at the back of the line. Do you want to be the top? Then join me at the bottom. Because I came to serve and not to be served. And he invites us to do the same. If we're in competition with others, then if we stoop down to serve them, they might kick us in the face. They might judge us. They might look down at us. But if we realize how much God has already served us, how much he has done for us even though we don't deserve it, then we can turn around and serve others generously and not worry about what they're going to say about us. Then we can offer our lives as a sacrifice to God because God has already sacrificed for us. And he's only asking us to do what he himself has already done for us. So you can see how this gratitude leads to us not being afraid to give generously. We know that life includes a lot of suffering, and serving the Lord and trying to follow church teaching requires a lot of sacrifice. But we realize that Jesus has been there before us, that he has offered his life as a sacrifice, and we don't have a high priest who's unable to sympathize with our weaknesses because he has been similarly tested. Jesus knows what it's like to live here on earth. He knows that love is always going to look like sacrifice. And that's precisely the invitation, right? If we're comparing, competing, complaining, if we're trying to be consumers, then we're not really living a life of self-giving love. Only when we allow Jesus to give his life for us and we receive his gift, can we then turn around and make the same kind of gift to others. And so that's really what our stewardship renewal is about. It's not how much are you going to give, but rather the Lord has already given so much. What are you going to do with the gifts he's given you? Are you going to use them selfishly, or are you going to use them generously as opportunities to bless others and to bless God? So turning in a stewardship commitment card is not the end of stewardship. It's in a very way the beginning. But it's a great challenge for each of us and a great opportunity for all of us to step back just a little bit from our everyday life and say, hey, God has blessed me. And so the first thing we start with, on the inside you'll see this first panel, is our stewardship of time. Stewardship of time. And you'll notice that this isn't asking you to give time to the church other than coming to Sunday Mass, which you're already doing. This is about quality time. Quality time with God in prayer, quality time with family meals and with family time. And that's because while God has given us 1,440 minutes a day, most of us seem to think we have 1,597 minutes to spend, and we'll run a time budget, a time deficit every single day. And we only have so much, and so the question is, how am I going to use that? Am I going to use it on my faith and family and friends, the things that are really most important to me? Or do I end up spending my time on things that aren't that important, that don't bless others and that don't really bless me either? There's a great time examination of conscience. In the middle panel, you'll see talent, and talent is where we ask you to give back to the church in some way. Now, there's lots of opportunities for you to serve, and in fact, so many that that talent panel continues on the back with 2 more columns, because there's lots of opportunities. And that's what this booklet is for. Many of those things you might not recognize. What is that? So you might look up like Ranger Rosary, for example, and the booklet will tell you what that is. We ask that everyone pitches in and helps with one area of talent around the parish. I like to think of it as being part of the family. You do chores, right? And so this is what it's like. But it shouldn't feel like a chore. It should be something that you give generously, but a way that you are already gifted, and then you're using that to bless others. So there's 2 ways you could approach this. One, you could just sign up for the same thing you've always volunteered for, something that you're good at, something that you know how to do, a way that you can continue to give back. Or you might find stretching yourself a little bit. You might sign up for like the choir. Maybe you've always thought about being a choir member. but you haven't yet said yes to it. And maybe this is the time to try something new and different and see how it goes. I don't want you to sign up for all of them because, well, we need room for everybody, but I do want you to sign up for at least one thing. And then lastly is our treasure section. And a lot of people like to tell me, well, I put money in the basket, and that's great, thank you for that. But I think it's hard for us to be generous if we don't plan ahead, if we don't reflect on our gifts. So when we look at the amount we've received and then we look at the percentage that we're giving, that's a really great way for us to ask ourselves, am I being generous? And that's really what we're asking. I can't tell you what generosity looks like in your particular case, but I want you to continue to ask yourself, this costs you something. It is a sacrifice. Surprise, surprise, right? It's part of practicing to be a good disciple. The more we give back to the Lord, when it hurts a little bit to give, is actually when we find it most fruitful and most of a blessing for us. When we started the stewardship program a few years ago, I thought I kind of had stewardship figured out. But every year I've continued to learn and grow more about stewardship and find myself more challenged in different ways. One of the ways that most challenges me is actually the fact of your generosity. When I see how generous our parishioners are in various ways, how you work different kinds of volunteering and service into your busy lives, that really inspires me to be more generous. And so thank you for your example of stewardship. Thank you for serving others as Christ has served us. So Johnny was out trick-or-treating yesterday, and as he's walking down the sidewalk, he hears a thump, thump, thump behind him. And he turns around and looks, and there's a coffin hopping down the sidewalk. So he screams, he drops his candy, he runs home and closes the front door and locks it. And he's waiting there, and all of a sudden he hears thump, thump, thump down the sidewalk. Thump, thump, thump up the stairs. Crash! The coffin breaks through the front door. He runs upstairs, runs into the bathroom, locks the bathroom door, and he's hiding in the bathroom. Thump, thump, thump up the stairs. Crash! The coffin breaks through the bathroom door. He starts grabbing things out of the medicine cabinet and throwing them at the coffin. Finally, he grabs a bottle of cough syrup, and it hits the coffin, and it splatters everywhere. And the coffin stops.